The morning sun of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across the massive courtyard of the Galactic Military Academy. Cadets from dozens of different worlds walked between the towering buildings made of gleaming metal and crystal. Their voices created a symphony of different languages and sounds as they hurried to their classes. Hyeonwoo adjusted his crystalline collar and checked his datapad one more time. The Valerian cadet had been looking forward to this class for months. Advanced Interspecies Combat Theory was only offered to final-year students, and today marked the beginning of their most important semester. His crystal-like skin reflected the morning light as he walked through the academy doors. The classroom was unlike any other in the academy. Instead of regular desks, there were adjustable stations that could accommodate the different body types of various alien species. Holographic displays lined the walls, showing historical battles and military formations from across the galaxy. Nari was already seated when Hyeonwoo entered. The Thraxian cadet methodically arranged her forearms around her workstation, each hand holding a different tool or data device. Her species was known for their incredible organization skills and attention to detail. She nodded politely at Hyeonwoo as he took the station next to hers. Taeho arrived moments later, his skin cycling through nervous blue and yellow patterns. The Zentarian species communicated emotions through color changes, and right now, everyone could see he was both excited and anxious about the class. His large eyes scanned the room as he found his place near the back. Sa Young entered last, moving with the quiet confidence typical of her people. The Korthok cadet had enhanced mental abilities that allowed her to process information faster than most species. She often knew what others were thinking before they spoke, which made her both valuable as a teammate and sometimes difficult to be around. Commander Dae-young walked into the classroom exactly as the academy bells chimed. The Centaurian officer was known throughout the academy for his strict punctuality and no-nonsense teaching style. His gray skin bore the scars of countless battles, and his multiple eyes missed nothing as they swept across the room.
Good morning,
Cadets Commander Dae-young said, his voice carrying easily through the room. Welcome to Advanced Interspecies Combat Theory. Over the next semester, you will study the greatest military conflicts in galactic history. We'll learn not just what happened, but why it happened, and how it changed the way we think about warfare. The commander activated the main holographic display. Images of famous battles flickered to life above their heads. Hyeonwoo recognized some of them from his basic military history classes, but others were completely new to him. Your final project will require you to choose one significant military restriction or treaty that has shaped modern galactic warfare, the commander continued. You will research its origins, analyze its impact, and present your findings to the class. Nari raised one of her four hands. Commander, what kind of restrictions are we talking about? Excellent question, Cadet Nari, Commander Dae-young replied. There are many examples. The Plasma Weapon Limitation Treaty, the Asteroid Bombardment Accord, the Civilian Protection Protocols. He paused and looked around the room. Or perhaps the most interesting of all, the Human War Ban. A murmur went through the classroom. Several cadets exchanged confused glances. Taeho's skin shifted to a puzzled orange color. Commander, did you say the Human War Ban? I thought humans were banned from war by the Galactic Council. Commander Dae-young smiled, which was always a slightly unsettling sight, given his species' multiple rows of teeth. That is a common misconception. Cadet Taeho. The Human War Ban was not imposed by any external authority. It was implemented by the humans themselves. Sa Young leaned forward, her enhanced mind already processing the implications. That makes no sense, Commander. Why would any species voluntarily limit their own military capabilities? Another excellent question, the commander said. Especially when you consider that humans are widely regarded as one of the most effective military forces in the galaxy. Hyeonwoo's crystalline features brightened with curiosity. Most effective? But they are relatively new to galactic society. How could they be more effective than species that have been fighting wars for thousands of years? The classroom fell silent as Commander Dae-young considered his answer. He walked to the window and looked out at the academy grounds where cadets from dozens of species trained together. Tell me, cadets, what do you know about human military history? He asked without turning around. They won the Terminus War about a century ago, Nari said, consulting her datapad. It was against a coalition of 12 species. But the details are classified above our clearance level. They seem to recover quickly from losses, Tejo added, his skin showing thoughtful purple patterns. In our tactical simulations, human units continue fighting even when other species would retreat. So-young nodded slowly. Their psychological profiles show unusual tolerance for stress and conflict. But that still does not explain why they would ban themselves from warfare. Commander De Young turned back to face the class. You are all asking the right questions, but you are thinking about this backwards. You assume that military restriction comes from weakness. What if I told you that sometimes restriction comes from strength? What if a species becomes so effective at warfare that they choose to limit themselves? The cadets looked at each other with growing confusion and concern. I do not understand, Commander. Hyan-Wu said. If a species is strong, why would they not use that strength? Because, Cadet Hyan-Wu, sometimes the greatest danger is not your enemy. Sometimes the greatest danger is yourself. The commander activated another holographic display. This one showed a simple star map, with one system highlighted in red. Terminus system, he said quietly, where everything changed. Where the galaxy learned what humans are truly capable of when they decide to fight without restrictions. The room was completely silent now. Even Tejo's skin had gone completely gray, which indicated deep concern among his people. For your final project, I want volunteers to research the human war ban, but I must warn you. This is not like studying other military restrictions. To truly understand why this ban exists, you will need to learn about the Terminus War. You will need to understand what happened when humans fought without any limitations. Commander De Young looked around the room, his multiple eyes studying each cadet carefully. The research will require you to speak with someone who was there, someone who witnessed what humans are capable of when they choose to fight with everything they have. Are you prepared for that level of truth? Hyan-Wu felt his crystalline skin growing warm, which happened when he was excited or nervous. Commander, are you saying the ban exists because humans are too good at war? I am saying, Cadet Hyan-Wu, that some powers are too dangerous to use freely. Sometimes the wisest choice is to limit yourself before others have to limit you. Commander walked back to his desk and picked up a datapad. I have arranged for you to meet with Admiral Ji-hoon tomorrow. He is a human veteran who served during the Terminus War. He has agreed to share his experiences with you. But remember, cadets, some knowledge changes you. Once you learn certain truths, you cannot unknow them. So-young raised her hand slowly. Commander, why are you telling us this? Why is it important for us to understand? Commander De Young looked at her with what might have been approval, because Cadet So-young. You are the future military leaders of your respective species. You will make decisions that affect billions of lives. You need to understand that sometimes the most important military decision is the decision not to fight. And you need to understand that sometimes the strongest species in the galaxy is the one that chooses to limit its own power. The class ended with the cadets sitting in thoughtful silence. As they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave, each of them was already thinking about tomorrow's meeting with the human admiral. None of them realized that their understanding of warfare, of power, and of humanity itself was about to change forever. The meeting room in the Academy's veteran wing felt different from the rest of the building. The walls were lined with dark wood instead of metal, and old battle flags from various species hung in display cases. In the corners, making the space feel more like a private study than a military facility. Han-Wu arrived first, his crystalline skin reflecting the warm light as he chose a seat at the oval table. His nervous energy made tiny light patterns dance across his features. He had spent most of the night reading what little public information existed about the Terminus War. But the official records were frustratingly brief. Nari entered next, moving with her usual methodical precision. Each of her forearms carried different research materials. She had organized everything she could find about human military history, though she quickly discovered that most detailed records were classified. Her thorax clicked softly as she arranged her materials in perfect order. Tejo's skin showed swirling patterns of blue and yellow as he took his seat. The Zentarian had tried to use his species' extensive data networks to learn more about humans. But even their vast information systems had surprisingly little about human warfare. The gaps in available information only made him more curious and concerned. Sa Young arrived last, as usual. Her enhanced mental abilities had allowed her to process the available information faster than the others. But she had discovered something troubling. Every time she tried to use her telepathic skills to research human thoughts or memories in the Academy's database, she hit walls of mental discipline that she had never encountered before. "Commander?" Dayoung opened the door and stepped aside to let their guest enter. The human who walked into the room was not what any of the cadets had expected. Admiral Ji-hoon was elderly by human standards, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of many years and difficult experiences. But there was something in the way he moved, a quiet alertness that suggested he was still very dangerous despite his age. He wore a simple civilian suit rather than a military uniform, but somehow that made him seem more intimidating rather than less. "Cadets," Commander Dayoung said formally, "may I present Admiral Ji-hoon, formerly of the Human Defense Force." "Admiral, these are the students I told you about." The Admiral nodded politely to each cadet in turn. When his eyes met theirs, the student felt as if they were being carefully evaluated. His gaze was not hostile, but it was thorough and intelligent. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us, Admiral," Hyan-woo said, his crystal skin brightening with respect. "We are honored by your time." Admiral Ji-hoon smiled, and the expression transformed his face completely. "The honor's mine, Cadet Hyan-woo." It is not often that I get to speak with such promising young military minds from across the galaxy. He took a seat across from the students and folded his hands on the table. "Commander Dayoung tells me you want to understand the human warband. That is not a simple topic, and the truth may be disturbing. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" For cadets exchanged glances and nodded together. "Very well," the Admiral said. "But first, I need you to understand something important. When I tell you about the Terminus War, I am not bragging about human achievements. I am sharing a warning about human capabilities." Sa Young leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, why is there so little information available about this war? Our research found almost nothing detailed. 'Cause Cadet So Young, most species prefer not to remember what they witnessed. And humans prefer not to be reminded of what we are capable of when we fight without restraint." Admiral Ji-hoon stood and walked to the window. Outside, cadets from dozens of species trained together on the Academy grounds, their different abilities complementing each other in peaceful cooperation. Before the Terminus War began, humans had been part of galactic society for only about 50 years. We were considered a minor species, aggressive perhaps, but limited by our technology. In small territory, we turned back to face the students. We had fought some border conflicts, small disagreements with neighboring systems, nothing major. Most species saw us as useful allies or minor threats, depending on the situation. No one considered us particularly dangerous, Nari consulted, her datapad with two hands while taking notes with the other two. Our records showed that humans had inferior technology compared to most established species. How did that change? Did not change? Cadet Nari, that is the first thing you must understand about human warfare. We do not wait for better technology. We use what we have, and we use it in ways that others do not expect. The Admiral returned to his seat and looked directly at each student. Human military doctrine is different from most species. When your people fight wars, you think of them as political tools, ways to gain advantage or settle disputes. You have rules about what is acceptable and what is not. You fight until you achieve your political goals, then you negotiate peace. Taeho's skin shifted to curious orange patterns. That sounds reasonable. Admiral, how else would you approach warfare? Admiral Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Humans do not fight wars to achieve political goals. Cadet Taeho, when humans decide to fight, we fight to win completely. We fight until our enemy cannot fight anymore. We fight until the war is over forever. The silence in the room was heavy. Even Commander Dayoung, who had heard this before, looked uncomfortable. "Do not understand the difference," Hyan-woo said softly. "The difference," Admiral Ji-hoon replied, is that most species will accept a reasonable defeat. They will surrender when the cost becomes too high, when they realize they cannot achieve their goals. Humans do not surrender. We do not accept defeat. We change the nature of the conflict until we can win. So-young felt a chill despite her mental defenses. What does that mean in practice, Admiral? It means, Cadet So-young, that when most species fight a war, they consider what they are willing to lose. Humans consider what we are willing to sacrifice. There is a very important difference between those two concepts. Admiral Ji-hoon activated a small holographic projector on the table. A star map appeared, showing the Terminus system and the surrounding sectors. The Terminus War began over a simple territorial dispute. 12 species formed a coalition to claim mining rights in the Terminus system. The system was in space that humans considered ours, though our legal claim was weak by galactic standards. The hologram zoomed in to show the planets and asteroid fields of the system. The coalition demanded that humans abandon our settlements and mining operations. They offered compensation, which was actually quite generous. Any reasonable species would have accepted the deal. Nari looked puzzled. Why did humans refuse? If the compensation was fair and your legal claim was weak, what was the strategic benefit of fighting? Admiral Ji-hoon looked at her with something that might have been sadness. That question shows the fundamental difference between human thinking and everyone else's thinking. Cadet Nari, you assume that strategic benefit was the deciding factor. What else would it be? Taeho asked, his skin showing confused purple. Swirls, Principal, the Admiral said simply. Humans had lived in that system for 20 years. We had built homes there. We had buried our dead in that soil. So the coalition was asking us to abandon people who trusted us to protect them. Commander Dae-young spoke for the first time since the introductions. Admiral, perhaps you should explain how the coalition approached the situation. Yes, that is important context, Admiral Ji-hoon agreed. The coalition believed they were being reasonable. They offered compensation for our losses. They gave us 6 months to evacuate. They even offered to help relocate our people to other systems. He paused and looked at each cadet again. When humans refused, the coalition was genuinely confused. They could not understand why we would fight a war we could not win over territory that was not legally ours. So they attacked, Yanwu asked. They gave us additional warnings first. They demonstrated their military superiority by destroying some of our mining equipment. They captured a few of our patrol ships without harming the crews. They thought this would convince us to be reasonable. Admiral Ji-hoon's expression became very serious. What they did not understand is that humans do not see demonstrations of force as warnings. We see them as attacks. And when humans are attacked, we do not look for ways to avoid further conflict. We look for ways to end the conflict permanently. So-young felt her enhanced mental abilities picking up emotional undertones from the Admiral that frightened her. Admiral, what happened next? Next, Cadet So-young. The coalition learned why humans had earned a reputation for being unpredictable. They expected us to either surrender or fight a conventional war using accepted galactic military practices. The Admiral stood again and looked out the window at the peaceful Academy grounds. Instead, we began fighting a human war, and that changed everything for everyone involved. The room was completely silent as the cadets absorbed what they had heard. Each of them was beginning to understand that they were about to learn something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. Tomorrow, Admiral Ji-hoon said quietly, I will tell you what a human war looks like. But tonight I suggest you spend time with your fellow cadets from other species. Enjoy their company, because after tomorrow you will see them differently. The students left the meeting room. Each of them felt a growing sense of unease about what they would learn next. The second meeting took place in a different room, one with thicker walls and better sound dampening. Commander Dae-young had explained that some discussions required complete privacy. When the cadets arrived, they found Admiral Ji-hoon already. Waiting with several sealed data containers on the table, Hyenwoo noticed that the Admiral looked older today, as if the memories he was about to share had aged him overnight. The crystalline cadet's skin showed muted colors, reflecting his nervous anticipation. Nari had brought even more research materials, but Admiral Ji-hoon gently asked her to put them away. What I am about to tell you is not in any database or textbook, he said. These are classified records that have been sealed for good reasons. Taeho's skin cycled through worried yellow patterns as he took his seat. He had spent the night thinking about the Admiral's warning, and the more he considered it, the more concerned he became. Sa-young had tried to use her mental abilities to prepare herself for what she might learn, but she found herself unable to focus properly. Something about the Admiral's presence made her enhanced perception feel scattered and unreliable. Yesterday I explained how the Terminus War began, Admiral Jihoon said, opening the first data container. Today, I will tell you how it was fought. But first, you need to understand something about human military thinking. He activated a holographic display showing human military organizational charts. Most species organize their military forces around their strengths. Valerians use their crystal technology for energy weapons. Thoraxians use their multiple arms for complex equipment operation. Centaurians use their color communication for instant battlefield coordination. The cadets nodded. This was basic military science that they had learned in their first year. Humans do not organize around our strengths, the Admiral continued. We organize around the assumption that we will face enemies who are stronger, faster, smarter, and better equipped than we are. Haeonwoo looked puzzled. But Admiral, that would mean you expect to lose every battle. No, Cadet. Haeonwoo. It means we expect to win battles we should lose. There's a very important difference. Admiral Jihoon opened another data container and pulled out what looked like weapon schematics. When the Coalition attacked our settlements in the Terminus system, they used standard galactic warfare tactics. They targeted military installations first, avoided civilian areas, and sent demands for surrender through proper diplomatic channels. He spread the schematics on the table. They expected us to respond with standard tactics as well. Ship-to-ship combat, territorial defense, eventual negotiation when losses became too high. Nari examined the schematics with her enhanced vision. These weapons designs look primitive compared to Coalition technology. They're primitive. Admiral Jihoon agreed. Coalition ships had better shields, faster engines, more powerful weapons. In a direct fight, we were completely outmatched. Taeho's skin showed confused orange swirls. Then how did you fight them? We did not fight their ships, Cadet Taeho. We fought their supply lines. We fought their communication networks. We fought their assumptions about how war should be conducted. The Admiral activated another holographic display, this one showing the Coalition fleet movements during the first month of the war. The Coalition had divided their forces into 3 fleets. Each fleet was more powerful than our entire military. They planned to capture our settlements one by one, minimizing casualties and demonstrating their overwhelming superiority. Leaned forward, her enhanced mind beginning to see the pattern. You attacked them where they were not expecting resistance. Exactly, Cadet So-young. While their fleets were positioning to attack our settlements, human engineering teams were reverse engineering their technology from wreckage of previous skirmishes. Admiral Jihoon pulled out another set of documents. This is something that surprised the Coalition. Most species treat enemy technology as foreign and incompatible with their own systems. Humans treat enemy technology as components that can be improved and repurposed. He showed them images of human ships that had been modified with captured Coalition technology. Within 3 weeks, our engineers had figured out how to integrate Coalition shield generators into our ships. Within 6 weeks, we had improved their design efficiency by 30%. Nari's 4 arms moved rapidly as she tried to take notes. On everything. How is that possible? Different species use completely different technological approaches. Because humans do not care if something was designed for us or not. Admiral Jihoon replied. If it works, we will find a way to make it work better. If it does not work, we will break it down and rebuild it until it does work. The Admiral's expression became more serious. But technology adaptation was just the beginning. The Coalition made their first major mistake in the 4th week of the war. He activated a new holographic display showing one of the human settlements. Coalition. Forces surrounded New Busan, one of our largest mining colonies. They demanded surrender and gave the colonists 24 hours to evacuate. Taeho's skin shifted to worried blue. Did the colonists surrender? The colonists voted, Admiral Ji-hoon said quietly. Every adult in the colony had a choice. Leave, with the coalition guarantee of safe passage, or stay and fight. How many chose to leave? Haeon-woo asked. The silence in the room was heavy with shock. The coalition could not understand this decision, Admiral Ji-hoon continued. They increased their offers of safe passage. They promised new homes on better worlds. They even offered individual compensation packages. Say, So-young asked, though her enhanced perception was already picking up the emotional weight of the answer. They said that New Busan was their home, and they would rather die defending it than live somewhere else. Admiral Ji-hoon paused and looked at each cadet carefully. This is where you need to understand something crucial about human psychology. Other species fight for territory, resources, or political advantage. Humans fight for each other. He activated another display, showing the siege of New Busan. The coalition expected a quick victory. They had the colonists surrounded and completely outgunned. But they made the mistake of treating this as a normal military operation. What happened? Nari whispered. The colonists did not fight like soldiers defending a military base. They fought like families defending their homes. Every building became a fortress. Every street became a battlefield. Every colonist became a combatant. The holographic display showed the progression of the siege over several weeks. Coalition forces found themselves fighting in conditions they had never trained for. Urban warfare where every civilian was a potential threat.
Underground.
Tunnel systems that the colonists had spent years building. Booby traps made from mining equipment. Taeho's skin had gone completely gray with distress. How long did the siege last? For months, Admiral Ji-hoon replied. For months of fighting that grew more brutal every day. The coalition brought in specialists, heavy weapons, siege equipment. Nothing worked as they expected. He showed them casualty reports that made all 4 cadets feel sick. But the worst part for the coalition was not the military losses. It was the psychological impact on their forces. What do you mean? Haeon-woo asked. Coalition soldiers were not prepared to fight enemies who would never surrender. They were not prepared to face humans who would detonate mining charges to bring down buildings rather than let them be captured. They were not prepared for colonists who would fight with kitchen knives when they ran out of ammunition. Admiral Ji-hoon's voice became very quiet. Most species surrender when defeat becomes inevitable. Humans change what inevitable means. So-young felt her mental defenses struggling against the emotional intensity of the memories the Admiral was sharing. Admiral, did the colonists hold the settlement? New Busan fell on day 118 of the siege. Coalition forces finally captured the settlement after reducing most of it to rubble. The Admiral paused and activated one final display. They found 53 human survivors out of 8,000 colonists. The room was completely silent. But here's what the coalition did not understand, Admiral Ji-hoon continued. The siege of New Busan was not about holding territory. It was about sending a message to every human settlement in the system. What message? Taeho asked, his skin showing patterns of fear and confusion. That humans do not surrender. 8. That every settlement the coalition wanted to capture would cost. The months of fighting and thousands of casualties. That this war would not end quickly or easily. Admiral Ji-hoon closed the data containers and looked at each cadet. The siege of New Busan lasted for months. The coalition had planned for the entire war to last 6 months. He stood and walked to the window. After New Busan, the coalition realized they were not fighting a territorial dispute. They were fighting a species that treated warfare as total commitment to victory regardless of cost. What did they do next? Nari asked. Admiral Ji-hoon turned back to face them, and his expression was sadder than before. They decided to escalate. They thought that if they could make the cost high enough, humans would finally be reasonable. And surrender? Did it work? So-young whispered. No, Cadet So-young. It made everything worse, because the coalition learned that. The third meeting took place in the Academy's most secure briefing room. Admiral Ji-hoon had requested additional privacy measures. Commander De Young had arranged for electronic dampening fields to prevent any recording or transmission of their conversation. When the cadets arrived, they found the admiral already seated with a single, heavily sealed container on the table. His expression was more serious than they had ever seen it, and there was something in his eyes that made each of them feel deeply uncomfortable. Haiyan-Wu's crystalline skin showed dim, worried patterns as he took his seat. He had spent the previous night thinking about the siege of New Busan, and the images had haunted his dreams. Nari arranged her research materials with less precision than usual. Her forearms moved with nervous energy, and she found herself unable to concentrate on organizing her notes properly. Taiho's skin remained a constant gray color, indicating deep distress among his people. The Zentarian had tried to discuss what he was learning with other cadets from his species, but found that he could not explain it in ways that made sense to them. So-young had given up trying to use her mental abilities during these meetings. The emotional intensity of the Admiral's memories was too overwhelming for her enhanced perception to handle safely. "Today I will tell you about the end of the Terminus War," Admiral Ji-hoon began. "But first, you need to understand what happened after the siege of New Busan changed everything." He opened the sealed container and removed a data crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "This contains records that have never been shared with non-human species. After today, you will understand why." The Admiral inserted the crystal into the holographic projector, but did not activate it immediately. The coalition made a decision. After New Busan fell, they decided that humans were too stubborn to be defeated by conventional warfare. "What did they do?" Hyun-woo asked quietly. "They chose to target human civilian populations directly. They believed that if they could make the cost high enough, human military forces would be forced to surrender to protect innocent lives." The room fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. Admiral Nari said carefully, targeting civilians is against every galactic warfare convention. "Yes, Cadet Nari, it is." The coalition justified their decision by claiming that humans had made it impossible to distinguish between military and civilian targets. After all, the colonists of New Busan had fought as soldiers. Admiral Ji-hoon activated the holographic display. Images appeared showing peaceful human settlements, farms, schools, hospitals, homes where families lived quiet lives far from any military installations. The coalition sent a message to Earth, the Admiral continued. They demanded complete human withdrawal from the Terminus system. If humans refused, the coalition would begin destroying one civilian settlement per week until compliance was achieved. Skin flickered with brief flashes of orange alarm. Did Earth respond? Earth sent a single-word reply, Admiral Ji-hoon said. No. So-young felt her enhanced senses picking up waves of terrible emotion from the Admiral's memories. What happened? Next, Admiral Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. The coalition destroyed the farming settlement of New Jeju. 3,000 civilians, including 800 children. They used orbital bombardment to ensure there were no survivors. The silence in the room was complete and heavy. The coalition sent another message to Earth, the Admiral continued. They expressed regret for the necessity of their action and repeated their demand for withdrawal. They gave Earth 1 week to comply before the next target would be destroyed. Did Earth surrender? Haiyan-Wu whispered. Admiral Ji-hoon looked at him with an expression that contained depths of sadness. The young cadet could not comprehend. No, Cadet Haiyan-Wu. Earth did not surrender. Instead, Earth sent a different kind of message. He activated another section of the holographic display. This one showed star charts with trajectory lines and tactical information that made all four cadets feel cold despite the room's warmth. 12 hours after the destruction of New Jeju, human military forces simultaneously attacked the home systems of all 12 coalition species. The cadets stared at the display in shock. Admiral Neri said slowly, that would require attacking targets hundreds of light years away from the Terminus system. How is that possible? Because while the coalition was focused on the siege of New Busan, human engineering teams had been working on a project that no one expected. They had reverse-engineered coalition jump drive technology and improved it. Admiral Ji-hoon highlighted specific points on the star chart. Human strike teams appeared in coalition home systems without warning, but they did not attack military targets or civilian populations. What did they attack? So-young asked, though her enhanced perception was already giving her disturbing hints about the answer. Infrastructure, Admiral Ji-hoon replied. Power generation facilities, communications networks, transportation hubs, water treatment plants, everything that modern civilization requires to function. It activated another display showing the scope of the attacks. In a coordinated strike lasting exactly 4 hours, human forces crippled the basic infrastructure of 12 different worlds simultaneously. Taeho's skin had gone completely colorless, something that only happened when Zentarians experienced extreme shock. How many casualties were there? 0, Admiral Ji-hoon said. Human forces specifically avoided causing any loss of life. They destroyed machines and facilities, not people. The cadets looked confused rather than relieved. But Admiral Hyun-woo said, if there were no casualties, how was that a meaningful military action? Admiral Ji-hoon's expression became very grim. Because Cadet Hyun-woo, human military planners had calculated exactly how long each coalition world could maintain basic civilization without those facilities. He activated a timeline display that showed projections and estimates. Food distribution networks would fail within days. Medical facilities would be unable to function within weeks. Transportation systems would collapse within months. Terrible. Understanding began to dawn on each cadet. The message to the coalition was very simple. Admiral Ji-hoon continued. If you destroy our civilians, we will not destroy yours. Instead, we will destroy your ability to keep your civilians alive. Naris' 4 arms trembled as she tried to process what she was hearing. Admiral, that would mean billions of people would die slowly instead of quickly. Cadet Nari. That is exactly what it meant. And human military command made it very clear that they had the ability to maintain these attacks indefinitely. So-young felt sick as her enhanced mind calculated the implications. The coalition could rebuild military forces, but they could not rebuild basic civilization fast enough to prevent mass starvation and social collapse. Correct, Cadet So-young? The coalition faced a choice. Continue their war against human civilians, and watch their own populations die slowly, or find another solution. Admiral Ji-hoon deactivated the holographic display and looked at each cadet. This is when both sides realized that the war had moved beyond anything that galactic civilization was prepared to handle. What do you mean? Taeho asked. The coalition had broken the rules by targeting civilians. Humans had responded by threatening to destroy entire civilizations without technically committing genocide. Both sides had crossed lines that were never supposed to be crossed. The admiral stood and walked to the sealed window. The war lasted another 14 months after that point. But it was no longer a war about territorial rights or mining claims. What was it about? Hyun-woo asked. Admiral Ji-hoon replied. The coalition realized that humans would never surrender, no matter what was done to them. Humans realized that the galaxy would never feel safe with us in it unless we proved we could be trusted with the power we had demonstrated. He turned back to face the cadets. Both sides began developing weapons and tactics that were designed not to win territory or achieve political goals, but to ensure that their species would continue to exist. Nari looked at her research materials and realized how inadequate they were. Admiral, what kinds of weapons? Weapons that could sterilize entire planets. Biological agents that could target specific species. Psychological warfare techniques that could drive entire populations insane. Self-replicating machines that could consume all matter in a solar system. The room was completely silent as the cadets absorbed the horror of what they were hearing. By the end of the war, Admiral Ji-hoon continued, human military forces had developed the ability to destroy not just the coalition, but potentially every species in the galaxy. And the coalition had developed similar capabilities directed at humanity. How did it end? So-young whispered. Admiral Ji-hoon returned to his seat and looked at each cadet with an expression of profound sadness. It ended when both sides realized that they had become the greatest threat to galactic civilization that had ever existed. What does that mean? Taeho asked. It means, Cadet Teho, that the war ended not with victory or defeat, but with a terrible understanding. Both humans and the coalition species had discovered that they were capable of horrors that should never be unleashed. Admiral Ji-hoon paused and looked back at the four young cadets. Because you are the future military leaders of your species. And you need to understand that some victories are too terrible to achieve. Some wars are too dangerous to fight. And some powers are too destructive to use. He opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The human warband exists to protect the galaxy from what humans are capable of. But more importantly, it exists to protect humans from what we might become. As the door closed behind him, the four cadets sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand the true scope of what they were learning. Chat controls Sonnet 4. The fourth meeting took place in the Academy's highest security vault, 3 levels underground. Commander Dae-young had personally escorted each cadet through multiple security checkpoints, and the room they entered had walls thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment. Admiral Ji-hoon was waiting for them with Commander Dae-young at his side. On the table between them lay several data crystals that seemed to pulse with their own dark energy, and a document case marked with security. Seals from multiple galactic authorities. Hyen-woo noticed that both officers looked older and more tired than he had ever seen them. His crystalline skin reflected the harsh lighting and muted, worried patterns. Nari had stopped bringing research materials altogether. Her forearms moved restlessly as she realized that everything she thought she knew about galactic military history was about to change forever. Teho's skin remained the deep gray that indicated profound distress among his people. He had not been able to speak normally to anyone since learning about the infrastructure attacks, and his family had begun to worry about his mental state. So-young had completely shut down her enhanced mental abilities. The emotional weight of what she was learning had become too much for her psychic defenses to handle, and she found herself relying on normal perception for the first time in years. Today, Commander Dae-young began. Admiral Ji-hoon will tell you about the end of the Terminus War and the creation of the human warband. But first, I need to explain why this information is classified at the highest levels of galactic security. The commander activated a holographic display showing the current structure of galactic government. Every species in the galaxy lives under the protection of agreements and treaties that maintain peace between our peoples. These agreements work because every species believes that others can be reasoned with, that conflicts can be resolved through negotiation. He paused and looked at each cadet carefully. What you are about to learn challenges that fundamental assumption. Admiral Ji-hoon opened the document case and removed papers that looked like they had been signed by representatives of dozens of different species. The final phase of the Terminus War lasted 6 months. During that time, both humans and the coalition developed weapons that could threaten not just each other, but every form of life in the galaxy. He spread the documents on the table. These are the actual military planning documents from that period. They have never been shown to anyone outside of the highest levels of government and military command. Hyen-woo leaned forward but found that the text was written in symbols he could not read. Admiral, what do these documents contain? They contain plans for the complete elimination of intelligent life in the galaxy. Admiral Ji-hoon replied quietly. Plans developed by both sides during the final months of the war. The silence in the room was absolute. I do not understand, Nari said slowly. Why would anyone develop such plans? Admiral Ji-hoon activated one of the data crystals. A holographic display showed weapon designs and tactical calculations that made all 4 cadets feel sick just looking at them. Because both sides had reached the same conclusion, he replied, that their enemy was too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing, and that the only way to ensure their own survival was to eliminate the threat completely. Commander Dae-young stepped forward. The coalition developed what they called the Human Extinction Protocol, a biological weapon designed to target human genetic markers specifically. It would have killed every human in the galaxy within months. Teho's skin flickered, with brief flashes of horrified orange. And humans developed something similar? Worse, Admiral Ji-hoon said. Humans developed the Galactic Sterilization Project, a self-replicating nanotechnology that could break down all organic matter on any planet it was deployed to. So-Yun felt her normal senses struggling to process what she was hearing. Admiral, that would not just kill the Coalition species, that would kill everything. Yes, Cadet So-Young. That was exactly the point. Human military planners had concluded that if the galaxy was going to be hostile to human existence, then the galaxy itself was the enemy. The Admiral activated another data crystal. This one showed deployment plans and targeting information that covered thousands of star systems. The Galactic Sterilization Project was designed to eliminate all life in the galaxy, except for humans, who would survive in specially prepared shelter worlds until the process was complete. Hyenwoo's crystalline features had gone completely dark with shock. How is such a thing possible? Because humans do not think like other species, Commander DeYoung explained. When most species face an existential threat, they look for ways to survive it. When humans face an existential threat, they look for ways to eliminate it forever. Admiral Ji-hoon closed the first set of documents and opened another case. Both sides came very close to implementing these plans. The Coalition had completed development of their biological weapon and was preparing for deployment. Humans had built the first generation of self-replicating machines and were conducting final tests. What stopped them? Nari asked. Fear, the Admiral replied simply. Both sides realized at the same time that they had created weapons they could not control. He showed them test results and projections that demonstrated the uncontainable nature of both weapons. The Coalition's biological weapon could not be guaranteed to affect only humans. Genetic drift and mutation meant it might eventually target other species as well. The human weapon, Taeho asked. The self-replicating machines could not be programmed to recognize the difference between enemy organic matter and friendly organic matter. Once deployed, they would continue consuming everything until there was nothing left to consume. Commander DeYoung activated a final holographic display. Both sides reached the same terrifying conclusion. They had developed weapons that would destroy not just their enemies, but potentially all life in the galaxy, including themselves, So-Young whispered. Exactly, Admiral Ji-hoon confirmed. Human military leaders realized that the Galactic Sterilization Project would eventually consume the shelter worlds as well. There was no way to guarantee human survival once the process began. The Admiral stood and walked to the center of the room. This is when something unprecedented happened in galactic military history. Both sides contacted each other not to negotiate surrender, but to negotiate the prevention of galactic extinction. They worked together, Hyenwoo asked in amazement. I had no choice, Commander DeYoung replied. The alternative was the end of all intelligent life in the galaxy. Admiral Ji-hoon activated one final data crystal. This one showed meeting records and communication transcripts between human and Coalition leaders. During the final weeks of the war, the negotiations lasted 18 days, he said. Both sides had to find a way to end the war without either side feeling that they had been defeated, because a defeated enemy might decide to use their extinction weapon out of desperation. How did they solve that problem? Nari asked. They agreed that both sides had become too dangerous to continue fighting, the Admiral replied. The Coalition agreed to withdraw their territorial claims and destroy their biological weapon. Humans agreed to withdraw from the Terminus system and destroy the self-replicating machines. Taeho's skin showed confused purple patterns. But that sounds like both sides lost. No, Cadet Taeho, Commander DeYoung said. Both sides won. They won the most important victory possible, the continued existence of life in the galaxy. Admiral Ji-hoon gathered the documents and data crystals. But there was one more condition to the agreement, the condition that led to the human warban. What condition? So-Young asked. The Coalition demanded guarantees that humans would never again develop weapons capable of galactic destruction. They wanted restrictions on human military development and oversight of human military activities. The Admiral paused and looked. At each cadet, human leadership agreed to these restrictions, but they insisted on one important modification. What modification? Hyenwoo asked. That the restrictions be self-imposed rather than externally enforced. Humans would police themselves, limit their own military development, and report there. Activities: 2 Galactic Oversight Committees. Commander De Young stepped forward. This is why the human warband is so unique in galactic history. It was not imposed by treaty or force. It was voluntarily accepted by humans as a way to prevent themselves from becoming the greatest threat to galactic civilization. Admiral Ji-hoon returned to his seat. The ban includes restrictions on weapon development, limits on military deployment, and requirements for external oversight of human military activities. But most importantly, it includes provisions for its own suspension. What does that mean? Nari asked. It means that the ban exists by human choice and can be revoked by human choice. If humanity ever faces an existential threat, or if galactic civilization is threatened by external forces, humans can lift the restrictions and return to unrestricted warfare. The room was silent as the cadets absorbed the full implications of what they had learned. So the ban protects the galaxy from humans, Taeho said slowly, but it also protects humans from themselves. Exactly, Cadet Taeho, Admiral Ji-hoon confirmed. And it serves as a reminder to every species in the galaxy that The final meeting took place in the same classroom where everything had begun 1 week earlier. The advanced security measures were gone, and sunlight streamed through the windows where alien cadets from dozens of species could be seen training. Peacefully together on the academy grounds, Admiral Ji-hoon sat at the instructor's desk with Commander De Young beside him. Both officers looked more relaxed than the cadets had seen them all week, as if sharing the burden of terrible knowledge had somehow made it lighter. Hyun-woo entered the classroom feeling like a completely different person than he had been 7 days ago. His crystalline skin showed deep, thoughtful patterns that reflected his new understanding of the galaxy and his place in it. Nari had brought no research materials at all. Her 4 arms moved with quiet precision as she took her seat, but her usual methodical energy had been replaced with something more contemplative and careful. Taeho's skin had returned to normal colors, but the patterns were more subdued than before. Zantarian carried himself with a new gravity that made him seem older and more serious than his actual age. So-young had tentatively begun using her enhanced mental abilities again, but she found that her perception of the emotions around her had changed fundamentally. She could sense layers of meaning and understanding that she had never noticed before. Today we conclude your education about the human warband, Admiral Ji-hoon began. But before we discuss what you have learned, I want you to understand what has happened to you this week. He gestured toward the window where other cadets were visible in the distance. Look at your fellow students out there. How do you see them now compared to 1 week ago? Hyun-woo considered the question carefully. I see them differently, Admiral. Before this week, I thought about other species in terms of their military capabilities. Now I think about them in terms of their potential for both creation and destruction. Good. Cadet Hyun-woo. And what about humans specifically? Humans are, Hyun-woo paused, searching for the right words. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they choose not to be dangerous. That choice makes them both safer and more frightening than any other species. Admiral Ji-hoon nodded approvingly. Cadet Nari, what will you tell other military officers about human capabilities? Gadia arranged her thoughts with the same precision she used for everything else. I will tell them that humans should never be underestimated, but more importantly, humans should never be cornered. A cornered human becomes something that the galaxy is not prepared to handle. And Cadet Taho, how has your understanding of warfare itself changed? Taeho's skin showed careful blue and green patterns as he formulated his response. I used to think that war was about winning. Now I understand that war is about choosing what you are willing to become in order to survive. Some choices change you so much that victory becomes meaningless. Excellent insight, Commander De Young interjected. Cadet Sol-young, with your enhanced mental abilities, what do you sense about the future of galactic warfare? Sol-young closed her eyes and extended her perception carefully. I sense fear, Commander. Not fear of humans specifically, but fear of the potential that exists within all species for becoming something terrible. The human warband is not just about humans. It is a reminder that any species might discover capabilities too dangerous to use. Admiral Ji-hoon stood and activated the holographic display one final time. instead of weapon schematics or battle plans. It showed a simple star map of the current galaxy, with peaceful trade routes and diplomatic connections between hundreds of species. This is what the human warband has protected for over a century, he said. Not just the continued existence of life, but the continued possibility of cooperation between species, who might otherwise see each other as threats, he highlighted. Several star systems on the map. These are human colonies today. They exist peacefully alongside settlements from dozens of other species. Human technology helps power Valerian crystal farms. Thoraxian engineering expertise improves human manufacturing. Zentarian communication networks connect human worlds to the rest of the galaxy. Hyanwu looked at the peaceful connections shown on the map. Admiral, would this cooperation be possible if the human warband did not exist? No, Cadet Hyanwu. Without the ban, every species would be constantly preparing for the possibility of human aggression. Resources that now go to peaceful development would be spent on weapons and defenses. Fear would replace trust as the foundation of galactic civilization. Commander De Young stepped forward. But you must also understand that the ban exists in a delicate balance. It works because humans choose to honor it, not because anyone can force them to honor it. Nari looked troubled. Commander, what would happen if humans ever decided that the ban was no longer necessary? That depends, Cadet Nari, on why they made that decision. If humans lifted the ban because they faced an existential threat, the galaxy would support them. If humans lifted the ban for aggressive purposes, the galaxy would unite against them. Admiral Jahoon returned to his seat. This is why it is so important for future military leaders like yourselves to understand this history. The human warband works because it is based on mutual understanding and respect, not fear and force. Teho's skin showed curious yellow patterns. Admiral, have there ever been situations where humans considered lifting the ban? 3 times in the past century, Admiral Jihoon replied. Once when the void creatures appeared at the galactic rim and threatened to consume entire solar systems. Once when the quantum plague began spreading through artificial intelligence networks. And once when the dark fleet emerged from whatever lies beyond our galaxy. What happened in those situations? Saw Young asked. In each case, humans consulted with the Galactic Council and received permission to temporarily suspend certain restrictions. Human military forces were deployed with enhanced capabilities, the threats were eliminated, and the full restrictions were restored immediately afterward. Commander De Young activated another section of the display showing recent military operations. These interventions demonstrated something important. The human warband does not make humans weak. It makes them trusted. When the galaxy faces threats too great for normal military forces to handle, everyone knows that humans can and will act to protect galactic civilization. Hyanwu studied the operational records, so the ban actually makes humans more effective rather than less effective. Exactly, Cadet Hyanwu. Because humans are trusted, they have access to resources and cooperation that would be impossible if other species feared them. When humans need to fight, they fight alongside allies rather than against the entire galaxy. Admiral Jihoon stood and looked out the window at the peaceful academy grounds. There is one more lesson I want you to understand before you leave here today. He turned back to face the cadets. The human warband exists not because humans became peaceful, but because humans learned to be wise. There is an important difference. Between those two things, what is the difference? Nari asked. Peaceful species avoid conflict because they do not want to fight. Wise species avoid conflict because they understand the true cost of fighting. Humans are not peaceful. We are wise. Saw Young extended her enhanced perception toward the Admiral and sensed something that surprised her. Of human capabilities, you are proud of human restraint, as Cadet So Young. Every day that the human warband remains in effect is a victory for human civilization. Not because we have avoided fighting, but because we have chosen to use our strength for protection rather than domination. Commander De Young gathered his materials as the class period neared its end. Your final assignment is to write a report, explaining what you have learned this week. More importantly, I want you to explain how this knowledge will influence your future decisions as military officers. Tejo's skin showed thoughtful purple swirls. Commander, what should we tell our fellow cadets about what we have learned? Tell them what they are ready to understand, the commander replied. Some truths must be earned through experience and maturity, but you can plant seeds of understanding that will grow when the time is right. Admiral Jehoon prepared to leave, but paused at the door. Remember, cadets, you now carry the burden of this knowledge. Use it wisely. Thought. The future of galactic civilization may depend on decisions made by officers like yourselves. Hien Wu raised his hand one final time. Admiral, if you could give us one piece of advice based on everything you have experienced, what would it be? The elderly human smiled, and for the first time all week, the expression reached his eyes. Never forget that the greatest victory is the war you never have to fight, and the most powerful weapon is the one you never have to use. As the Admiral left the classroom, the 4 cadets sat in contemplative silence. Outside the windows, alien cadets from dozens of species continued their peaceful training. Unaware that their future safety depended on the wisdom of choices made, long before they were born, Nari was the first to speak. We are different now. Yes, Hien Wu agreed. We understand things that we cannot unknow. Tejo's skin showed calm blue patterns. But we also understand why that knowledge is necessary. Sa Young extended her enhanced perception one final time, sensing the emotional resonance of everything they had learned. We understand that some responsibilities are too important to avoid, even when they are too heavy to carry easily. For cadets gathered their belongings and prepared to return to their normal academy lives. But each of them knew that they would never again see warfare, diplomacy, or their fellow species in quite the same way. They had learned that the greatest military force in the galaxy was one that chose not to fight. They had learned that the most dangerous weapon was one that was never used. And they had learned that sometimes the greatest victory was simply the choice to remain wise rather than become terrible. As they walked across the academy grounds together, they carried with them the knowledge that would shape their futures. As military leaders, the human warband would continue to protect the galaxy, not because humans were weak, but because humans were strong enough to protect the galaxy from themselves. And in classrooms across the academy, other cadets would continue to wonder about the mysterious human restriction on warfare, never knowing that the answer was both simpler and more profound than they could imagine. Sometimes the most powerful choice is the choice not to use your power at all.